these were lies that you were fed, but actually there is a truth out there. A truth does exist, and it makes so much sense, and it makes you feel amazing.
You're making this collection of women that you were warning all the other brothers don't marry, and creating all these bad experiences for women that's putting women off the idea of getting married at a young age in the first place. So they're not respecting females, full stop. But yet you want to turn around and talk about how, oh, what are you bringing to the table? I ain't bringing nothing to the table, man. It's you supposed to bring the things to the table. If you want your food cooked, you bring it yourself and let me cook it then.
You're masculine if you work, but then they have no-string marriages where they're promising them the world, pretending they're a sultan, and then they go home, and usually these girls are secret as well. So they don't even have the dignity of being known in the community.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam, ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. We're all doing well.
Bismillah.
How are you?
MashaAllah, hanging in there. It's getting chilly.
Is it getting chilly over there?
Yeah.
It's pretty cold in Scotland, let me tell you. Today we're coming together on the topic of Nafs, specifically the war on Nafs, meaning our war against ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. So why is this important, and what does this have to do with Muslim Academy? Well, in order to be the best version of ourselves, to be the best Muslims, to be the best mums, best spouses, it means that we have to actively and continuously work on ourselves. You know.
الشيطان لا ينصح عدوه الإنسان، ولذلك فيجب على كل مسلم أن يجاهد نفسه وهواه. ولذلك قال عليه الصلاة والسلام: المجاهد من جاهد نفسه لله، ولا يجوز له أن يستسلم لهوى النفس، لأن هذا الاستسلام سيودي به إلى الهلاك. ولذلك المسلم ينبغي دائما أن يتذكر العاقبة، أن يتذكر الدار الآخرة، وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى.
I'll put a disclaimer out there. First of all, words that we might use today, it's really important that the viewers give those words the respect they deserve and the study time that they deserve. So we are speaking about it in the context of our soul, but also our soul's inclination towards the not so good choices, the desires that we may have. So that's what we are speaking about today, inshallah. And I think the best way to get into it is by asking the first question. Are you ready, Malahan?
Yes, alhamdulillah, inshallah.
Also, you may notice that we're a mum down. Hopefully, inshallah, she's going to jump on. We're having some connection issues. What are the common nafs that have been nurtured within women by the likes of feminism, secularism, liberalism? And how do you think that's impacted a woman's desire to be mum or a woman of traditional roles?
I would say something that feminism has injected into the inner desires of modern women is lewdness. I would say immodesty, hedonism, the biggest of all, right? Which breaks down our desire for shyness. Because if you notice when we're younger, if your parents are putting you in lewd clothes, you're really modest and awkward in your own self. A lot of young women go through the ugly duckling phase, you know, where you feel weird in your own body and you're really shy. But feminists have definitely promoted their musicians and celebrities to help break that down. And then as that gets broken down in the teens, by the time you turn 20 and you go through, you know, a cultural Marxism and rhetoric in college, and by the time you leave college, many women have really soiled their reputation. So feminism appeals to the inner desire of the woman to engage in activities that are very Babylonian, we'll put it that way, very lewd and occultic in terms of expression. Then I would argue that liberalism has appealed to the women's inner desire. That has led to women closing their hearts, because in a liberal society, they don't have that sort of rhetoric around how fornication and adultery is immoral and sinful. The secularists have taken morality into a different direction and have allowed women to engage in behavior that would be more typical of poor male decision making. So liberalism allows this no social discipline in one's personal lust and desires, whereas Islam, a good Muslim woman is not going, she fears Allah, right? She's going to know on Judgment Day, he's going to be held accountable. She has to have patience, she'll be rewarded for all her suffering, as we know.
The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "No fatigue, nor disease, nor sorrow, nor sadness, nor hurt, nor distress befalls a Muslim, even if it were the prick he receives from a thorn, but that Allah expiates some of his sins for that." Sahih al-Bukhari.
I think generally, and same women, because we are talking and speaking in the context of women, but it applies to men as well. I think we have been fed this idea that your whims and your desires are your truth, which is very shirk-like, and we've grew up with that mentality. We know how powerful these narratives are. I was definitely fed this idea that as long as I'm not physically hurting anyone, I pretty much have all the choices that I want, and I can make all the decisions that I want, and I can achieve everything that I want.
Physically. They argue physically, but you can hurt someone emotionally and spiritually.
Exactly. But it's also nurtured that you can do whatever you need to do to achieve those truths and those desires. You can even make choices at the expense of others as long as you're achieving your truth in the process, or you're being sincere to yourself and all this stuff. And then you would be absolutely justified to go down this route. It's a very nostalgic yet narcissistic sort of fairy tale that you're fed when you're young. It's a shame, but it is very powerful. There's a whole network of people who have nurtured these ideas. It's came from our loved ones, our family, who have also been exposed to these narratives themselves and been conditioned in this way themselves. But like you said, the entertainment industry, movies, music, this is a lifelong culture that you're raised with. It's intense. It's intense. You can see actually that today's climate, the sort of narrative is changing. We see other ideologies like Red Pill, which we're going to get into a little bit later, exposing the flaws within the culture that we've been raised with, or the narratives that they have taken from ideologies like feminism and the like. And you can almost see the absolute shock. Not everything that men are saying now is right, but again, we'll get into that later. Traditional roles, all of this was all there ever was. It's only now, it's only in this day and age that it's different. And to hear that there's a whole other life system, and that actually boundaries are important, limiting yourself is important for development and growth. Why these ideas appear new.
Yes, I agree. And the very cryptic nature of trying to penetrate into the heart of women who are more honorable, more pure, more pious, more reformed, very dedicated, to really just put those needles in their hearts and just try to inject doubts into them, and like a hook in a fish's mouth, just really trying to rear them off their guided path. It's dangerous because they appeal to this inner part of a woman where show yourself, the male gaze. The male gaze is a huge thing that feminism has put apart. Feminism has many branches, but one of its branches is the utter and total liberation, which constantly bleeds into promiscuity and abortion culture, and you name it. I'm sure we could list off many subjects, right? Sub-subjects, many footnotes, many addendums to that. And that really messes the minds up of many women and destroys generations of people.
Definitely like the whole independent woman who can do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, and have no ties kind of thing. I've seen a lot of instances where young Muslim girls are not encouraged by their parents to get married young. So I wouldn't say it's specifically the society itself. I think even though the society does kind of encourage that, the parents themselves are encouraging it as well. Because I've known parents who They want their daughters to be educated, which I believe is very important, especially in our times. And a lot of parents who do encourage their children to go for, like, tertiary education, for example, after they've had that tertiary education, they actually insist on their daughters, instead of choosing to get married straight away, or even while they're studying, they want their daughters to go and get a job and work. I've heard some parents actually say, oh, well, if my daughter gets married, she's going to leave and that's it. I'm not going to benefit from her education, because that's what happens. Traditionally, if we look at the Islamic kind of setup, it's the boys that are responsible for really taking care of the family. It can happen, obviously, that girls can still have good relationship and be close with their families and taking care of their families as well. But it's not all the time and it's not expected of her. The burden is on the son to do that. They want the daughter to work, stay home and work. And then, they can benefit from the education that they've paid for her. And so I've heard parents say that, she has to work first so that, she can help us pay bills or whatever the case may be. I think a lot of young girls, they are interested in getting married young, but a lot of them are put off the idea of getting married young. They're not really encouraged.
And this is something that we should keep in mind as parents as well. In the Quran, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says, "O believers, protect yourself and your families from a fire whose fuel is people and stones, overseen by formidable and severe angels, who never disobey whatever Allah orders, always doing as commanded." I think Summer's made a fantastic point there, though. I totally agree. And it brings, again, a whole other set of issues. Sometimes we are fed as women that we can have a whole set of better choices. We, instead of settling for this life, this marriage life or this mum life, we can have careers, we can dress how we want, we can gain our own financial stability without any needs of a man, and sort of take our own individual road in life, which sounds very nice, right? But the thing is nothing happens without sacrifice. No choices can happen without sacrifice. Whether you prioritize a career, whether you choose to dress a certain way or carry yourself a certain way, all of it comes with sacrifice. You'll sacrifice things like your dignity, you'll sacrifice your honour, you'll sacrifice your youth or your time, your mental and physical health. So yeah.
The sacrifices you will make to be a CEO, boss babe, or have your own company, you'll definitely be putting your fingernails on the chalkboard, as they say. To think that, oh, well, I don't want to lose my body and I don't want to have stretch marks because of babies, but that somehow you're going to escape the aging process, but you'll have a bunch of money at the end, and then that's going to compensate for having actual living children who love and care about you. It's very strange, because in high school, I remember the college recruiters came in and they really pushed the idea of, if you don't go to college, you are a loser. You are an absolute loser. They think there's no real accomplishment in being a good mother or stay-at-home mom. And that appeals to the woman's inner desire to be somebody, to be the star of her own show. But I've made this point before, you're a star in the eyes of your children. No one will love you like the way your child does. Some people fall out with their children in the teenage years and they rekindle it when they're older. But that pure love is so soul rejuvenating. And you can't get that from your employees or from just having stacks of Benjamins. Because at a certain point, you travel to all the places. And you've eaten all the food at the hotels. You've gone to all the niche cafes.
I just want to say earlier on, it goes against our fitra. We're taught through Islam our value. We're taught through Islam a way of life that coincides with our fitra, our innate disposition. Like
our natural state of being before we have fallen into deep sin, right? That's correct.
Exactly. When Allah gives us Islam and gives us this roadmap to life, all of it coincides with that. And Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says in the Quran, "So direct your face, yourself, towards the religion, inclining to truth. Adhere to the fitra of Allah upon which He has created all people. No change should there be in the creation of Allah. That is the correct religion, but most of the people do not know." How were we impacted growing up by these narratives, and how did it shape our ideas of womanhood and motherhood?
So the narrative of you should follow your inner nafs, and no matter where they lead.
Yes, without exposing our previous sins, of course, but yes.
One way in particular that secular feminist philosophy influenced me was it did not make me realize how important marriage is, and that you should be looking for a husband. You need to be making sure about that. Right? We grew up with these movies called Not Another Teen Movie. Like, the amount of propaganda of lewdness that was pushed on us openly, like just being able to click through the channels and just seeing it, that was more of apparent because no male figure in my family ever talked about marriage, what you should look for in a husband, that I should even get married. My grandma never once, I was raised mostly with my grandma, she never once talked to me about marriage. Never. Only thing I ever remember her saying one time passively was, a good marriage is like a friendship. You're like friends. And I was like, okay. I was young, and that was the only thing she ever said. My mom never talked about it, except for, like, my mom was very jaded because of her past. She would just say things typical of, like, men are this and that. Like, she was very nihilistic because she had seen the worst behavior. The only people I really had to kind of hint at it was the Mormon community in Utah. Now that I'm older, I'm very thankful for that imagery. That's why it's so important for us to do this series, because there's the internet, and you never know who's going to stumble across it or whose mind we can change.
Yeah. What about you, Summer?
I always wanted to be a young mother. But I think with what I kind of have in common with Millihan maybe is the aspect of marriage. I didn't see marriage as being something so important. You see people around you when you grow up around having friends who their parents aren't married and stuff like that, and it was very normal something. Do you know what I mean? So I knew that I wanted to be a mum, like from a young, like by 20, I wanted to have my first child. I always knew that.
So when reflecting on the topic of nafs and self-improvement, one of the things that came to my mind was the ayah when Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, he says that maybe we will like something that is not good for us, and maybe we will hate something that is good for us. So subhanAllah, as reverts, often we have gone through the experience of having to change our lives, to change so many things about ourselves. Maybe there's certain things that practice that we used to have, things that we used to do, food that we used to eat, and we've had to give those up for the sake of Allah, because when we come to Islam, obviously we have to enter Islam completely. That's what it's about, even wearing the hijab, or maybe stopping from eating things like pork, drinking alcohol. There's so many things, subhanAllah. Why do we fight the ego? Why do we fight the nafs? It's so that we can have that better life, that a life that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala is going to be pleased with, the life that, Inshā'Allāh will be rewarded with Jannah, because obviously what life can be better than Jannah? So we have to surrender to Allah, and that takes a lot of patience and perseverance. And Allah tells us many times in the Quran to be patient, subhanAllah. And yesterday I was listening to a talk, and it's entitled, What We Ask Allah to Change Changes Us. And basically it's talking about the fact that we are tested sometimes with different situations, different challenges in life, difficulties. And we make dua, and we ask Allah to bring us out of these situations, these negative situations, these testing times. But Allah puts us in those situations for us to change. So we have to take those as opportunities to actually improve ourselves. So Islam is all about self-improvement. And the only way that we can really self-improve is to fight against our nafs, and that is something that is continuous, that we will have to do for all of our lives, Inshā'Allāh.
People in church that I knew, like there was a good few women who'd never been married and they had kids and stuff like that, right? So as I said, I'm not judging them, but that was the situation. So I think when I saw things like that, I felt like, well, what's the big deal if you just don't get married? Because a lot of people get married and then they end up in miserable marriages, or they're not happy, or they end up getting divorced. So I kind of had this perspective. So I didn't place so much emphasis on being married, but I knew that I wanted to be a mum and have kids. You know what I mean? So I think that's how it affected me, really. And obviously when I became a Muslim, it was just like, Muslims get married. So you just, you know what I mean? So it's like a whole package. It's explained to you why you have marriages, the role of the wife, the role of the husband. And, it's like, there's so much structure there. It's like, it kind of helps to dispel any kind of false ideas you may have had before. And not to say that it's going to, put rose-colored glasses on your face, but if you was having doubts on why marriage is important, it clarifies all of that. So, and obviously marriages are work as well. Exactly, because we know that marriages work. It's not like, two people get together and happily ever after, like the end of every Disney movie. Your everyday lives, when you're sick, when you're healthy, and people in general, everybody has phases and stages that they kind of go through. You're not going to be on the same level all the time. That's what's nice about Islam. It gives you that structure. So wherever it's been corrupted, Islam fixes those things. And that's for us to submit to and accept as well. Because I think sometimes people, maybe when they come to Islam, they feel like they're being judged sometimes because maybe somebody's going to give them some information that for them it's like, oh, it's a new something. And, they might feel like they've been put into a corner a little bit, but that's where we just have to be submissive. It's not that, that somebody's telling us something because they're trying to judge us. They're telling us that because, that's how we're going to improve ourselves as human beings and like take it to the next level in our lives. What does it mean to live your life? When young girls say that, it's just like, what does that even mean for you? Do you know what I mean? And if you don't know what it means, then why are you saying it? And if Islam isn't your kind of compass to living your life, then you're not living your life. You're living a lie, and you're going to send yourself into ruin at the end of the day.
What about you?
Don't want to get into too much of my past and that sort of thing, but when I was very young, I grew up with the arts, attended competitions, I won them. Because of that, I got nurtured in a way where I was fed this idea that I could achieve everything and anything. I could make life-changing decisions that are very materialistic, that possibly could have led me down a life of wealth. Like, these were the ideas. I'm not saying that I would have actually been capable of doing that, but that was the ideas that I was fed at a really, really, really young age. And because of some situations that happened still when I was young, but much later than that, I was thrown into the reality of how that was all a farce, how that was all lies. And honestly, my young self back then found it really hard to digest that. Had it burst in the real sense, it wasn't just that opportunities never happened. I ended up homeless. I ended up a young person herself. Like, stuff like that is pretty real and pretty raw, It took away the hope, really. And alhamdulillah, I gained Islam not that long after, and it sort of restored that hope. These were lies that you were fed, but actually there is a truth out there. A truth does exist, and it makes so much sense, and it makes you feel amazing. And like Summer was saying, it gives you that structure that you need in life to build and to grow in the real sense, not this superficial sense, which really we cannot put into words. I think we all can agree with that. Life-changing in the real sense. It's wealth in the real sense. It is everything in the real sense, Yeah. I wanted to tell you a story. There was this one time where I was stuck in traffic, and whilst I was waiting, I saw this woman walking along the other side of the road. She was probably between the ages of 50 to 60 years old. She was wearing this long wig, and she had on clothes that looked extremely tight and restricting, very uncomfortable, and she was wearing heels that were also really, really high. Wallahi, when I saw her, I genuinely felt sorry for her, and may Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala help her by guiding her and us all, Ameen. But what's interesting is that we, as Muslim women, we get a lot of criticism, especially in niqabis. We get a lot of criticism on us being extreme or us not blending in and all that jargon. But seriously, if we were to think about it logically, this woman is uncomfortable. I mean, when she was walking, there was nothing natural about it. It was very restricting looking, it was very uncomfortable looking. I honestly mean it when I say I felt sorry for her. This is something that she has been sold either by whatever she takes in or by the experiences that she's had being objectified. This is the definition of objectification and oppression of women, having to try and reach these and meet these unrealistic societal goals, trying to look perfect when we all know that beauty is in the eye of the beholder and perfect is for Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, no one else. Now, of course, the reason why we wear hijab is because Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala told us to do so, and that's number one why we do it. But if we look at the benefits, if we look at just this situation, although there'll be so much more, hijab freed me from that. Hijab freed me from that objectification and that oppression, that suffering. It's shocking that a person feels like they need to put themselves under that much pressure in order to gain really superficial and often unworthy attention from the people. Allah guide us and protect us.
Hearing our stories is going to put a lot of mercy in people's hearts, because the red pill community, especially female red pillars who are absolutely brutal on reformed women, mock them, degrade them. It's so important for people to recognize you have to have mercy. You have to have mercy, because people they were not guided, you know? That's why if someone was guided and then they turned back to sin, that's quite different than somebody who's never seen a good example. A lot of women might struggle with the desire to cook. They may struggle with battling that inner sloth and making excuses about how they don't know how to do anything, so why learn, so let's just eat out every night or order DoorDash. Fight against that feeling that tells you always choose the easy route. Sometimes in life, doing things the longer, harder way add to more longer lasting satisfaction. And cooking for someone is the language of love. It shows that you care about their nutrition. It shows you pay attention to details and care to make sure that their stomach is full. And that's actually very sweet. And the more you fight against that slothness, the better you'll get at cooking. And the more love will be infused into your food. So keep going.
Are the red pill narratives helpful? Do they add to the solution? And what is the solution?
The red pill thing is foolishness. Yeah, like there's so much foolishness. Like fun, especially from the Muslim red pillars. They make me sick most of all, because it's just like, you already have Quran and Sunnah. You have the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to follow. You have the wives of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to follow, and all the female companions and all the male companions. But yet you decide you want to push all of that to the side and look to some non-Muslim foolish man. Yeah, I'm trying to be as polite as possible. The reality is, a lot of these men who are telling young girls, I don't know the exact ages that they're saying, but all these things that they're pushing, these men are the same men who are making the women that they're telling women not to be. Because most of these guys, they're not staying in these marriages. And after having a kid or two and you feel bored, get divorced, yeah, and then you move on to somebody else. So you're making this collection of women that you were warning all the other brothers don't marry, and creating all these bad experiences for women that's putting women off the idea of getting married at a young age in the first place. So you're just a bundle of hypocrites, nonsensical hypocrites and idiots. It really makes me sick, and it's disgusting, and it's affecting a lot of young girls, because there's so much hypocrisy in it. They're not respecting females, full stop, okay? And yes, men need to be respected as well, but in the first place, men, respect yourselves. And another thing the brothers do is, like, they'll marry one girl and then turn around and behind their back go and marry 2 and 3 and 4, while you're not paying for those girls because you can't afford it. You got them on benefits, you know, you got them on welfare, you got them working and earning their own money to take care of the kids that you can't look after. But yet you want to turn around and talk about how, oh, what are you bringing to the table? I ain't bringing nothing to the table, man. It's you supposed to bring the things to the table. If you want your food cooked, you bring it yourself and let me cook it then.
You're masculine if you work, but then they have no string marriages where they're promising them the world, pretending they're a sultan, and then they go home, and usually these girls are secret as well. So they don't even have the dignity of being known in the community.
And let's look at one of many sources where Aisha radiallahu anha reported that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Announce this marriage publicly, conduct it in the mosque, and strike the drums for it." Ibn Taymiyyah also said that Malik obligated announcing the marriage. We need to be careful that we're not falling into behaviour that is unbefitting of a Muslim, because a Muslim woman is a woman who carries herself with dignity, who honours herself, and who is honoured by honourable and dignified men. Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says in the Quran, He has succeeded who purifies the soul, and He has failed who corrupts the soul. The way and means of purifying the soul is through Islam, not through other ideologies. We don't follow the principles and values of anything else other than our deen. I find a lot of Muslims today are trying to find shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. You need to understand your Rabb. You need to understand the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, how he implemented it, how the Sahaba implemented it, how the Tabi'een implemented it, how the Tabi'een implemented it. Like, these are all things that we should know. And a lot of people just don't have that passion, that thirst for knowledge, and that thirst to really achieve them best selves through that. A lot of the people that fall into these ideologies don't believe that Islam has the answers or isn't customized to modern day. But alhamdulillah, thanks to an ayat that was sent down by Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala after the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's last sermon, he said, "On this day I have perfected your religion and completed my favour upon you, and have approved for you Islam as your religion."
You're right that he perfected it. Exactly. Because what you're hinting at here is, why do they seek it? I'm sad to say I've paid so much attention to it, but these young men, they're looking for, I want to be the Sultan. I want to be the conqueror. And so Red Pill offers them, they think, this sort of Babylonian cheat code.
Can I just say something though? How ridiculous is that? How much in these narratives do they mock women for falling for feminism? And they are falling for the same false dreams, false narratives.
Exactly. Why is it that these men can't pick a decent woman? It ain't that hard. Wallahi, it is not. There's plenty of good women out there, and if you was a good man, you would be able to find her.
ونصيحتي لمن لم يتزوج من الشباب أن يهيئ نفسه للزواج وأن يعرف أحكام الزوجية وأحكام علاقة الرجل بالمرأة وما يباح له وما لا يباح وما يجب عليه وما يندب له وأمثال ذلك، حتى يؤسس حياته الزوجية على تقوى من الله بتمسك بأحكام شريعة الله جل وعلا. كما أنصح الزوجين أن يهيئ نفسيهما لمعرفة الأحكام، أحكام الصلاة والطهارة، أحكام الزكاة، أحكام الصيام، وأحكام الحج والعمرة. وإن كانت أحكام الحج والعمرة قد لا تتكرر لأكثر الناس إلا بعد مدة، فعند حصولها من كان قادرا أن يعرف الأحكام وصل إليها، وإلا سأل. أحكام الصلاة والطهارة والصيام والزكاة والحج هي داخلة فيها أحوال الأسرة، وداخل فيها حكم الزوجين، ليعرف هذه الأمور لمساسها بحياتهما.
The red pill ideology is a very emotional clapback to feminism. Although, you know, we can sort of relate with ideas, like we do agree that there's been a war against masculinity in the true sense, not in the superficial sense. And I feel like this is what red pill provides, a very superficial sense of what it means to be a man. So all you need is a sort of nice suit or a whole bunch of wealth, or, you know, a large female audience, and that sort of thing. It's very superficial validation that they're looking for.
And what do we see in the Sunnah? When they went to do the Umrah, and he told the companions to shave their heads and everything, because I can't remember exactly what happened. They couldn't complete the thing because the Quraysh had prevented them or something like that. He told them to shave their heads, and nobody did it. So then he went and he asked, I think it was Sauda radiallahu anha, and she told him, just go outside and shave your head. He took advice from his wives. He asked them their opinions on things. This is how to have a marriage, basically. But these men, they don't understand that.
We're all lacking. Both male and female, we're lacking. You know, we have been influenced by ideologies. We have been influenced by a lack of knowledge. When it comes to deen, there has to be justice. You know, you can't breach that balance. And unfortunately, when you're living for another ideology, and when that's at the forefront of your content, when it's at the forefront of your choices and behaviour, you are going to breach the balance. You know, it's almost like they want to punish us for a wee bit for everything feminism done to the world. How are you going to fix anything with that mentality? We've all been done a number by all these ideologies. We want to fix it, and the truth is the way of doing that, and that is Islam. How do you deal with your nafs? What's your advice? What have you read? What helps you?
فعليك يا عبد الله أن تجاهد هذه النفس، وأن تعنى بها غاية، وأن تعودها طاعة الله ورسوله، وأن تعودها الحذر من محارم الله. فالنفس على ما عودت عليه، إن عودت المعاصي والكسل والتهاون بأمر الله اعتادت ذلك وسارت عليه وثقل عليها ما يرضي الله. وإن عودت السير في الخير ومسارعة إلى الطاعات والحذر من المعاصي اعتادت ذلك وسارت عليه. والتوفيق بيد الله جل وعلا، لكن أنت مأمور بالأسباب، وهكذا أنت يا أمة الله مأمورة بالأسباب. وسئل بعض السلف عن جهاده نفسه وعن إتعابه إياها، فقال راحتها أريد. بعض أسلافنا الصالحين كان كثير العبادة وكثير العمل من الصلاة والصيام والحج وغير ذلك، فقال له بعض أصحابه: أتعبت نفسك؟ فقال: راحتها أريد. فالمؤمن إذا جاهد نفسه اليوم فهو جاهدها لراحتها، لتنجو من عذاب الله، لتفوز بالنعيم المقيم يوم القيامة في دار الكرامة، دار السرور، دار السعادة. يقال لأهلها يوم القيامة: يا أهل الجنة، إن لكم أن تصحوا فلا تسقموا أبدا، وإن لكم أن تحيوا فلا تموتوا أبدا، وإن لكم أن تشبوا فلا تهرموا أبدا، وإن لكم أن تنعموا فلا تبتئسوا أبدا.
Trying to do extra like ibadah, I advise people just pick whatever you find the easiest of those things to do and do more of it. So if you have money that you can give sadaqah, then do that. If it's salah that you find easy to do that. If it's fasting that you find easy to do, then do that. And whatever you choose to do to increase it, try to perfect it as much as possible. It's having that sincerity and, you know, having the intention and really trying our best to submit to Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala that is going to, you know, that is going to earn, Inshā'Allāh, His mercy. That should help us, Inshā'Allāh, try to, like, you know, master our nafs a little bit, because we all know that our nafs doesn't get us anywhere. When we fight against what Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala wants, we always end up in problems. Always balance that, just be having submission and looking at what is the right thing to do according to Quran and Sunnah, rather than what do I just feel like doing, you know. I
think if I was to give any advice on how to purify your soul, it would be, number one, to seek forgiveness. We need to recognize our sins. We need to take accountability for those. Sorry, let me just get somewhere in. Not taking accountability is a dangerous mindset and habit to get yourself into, because Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala told us that we are sinners, going to make mistakes, but it's those who run to repentance are the ones that are going to be the successful ones. So boundaries are so important. We have to limit ourselves in the things that we enjoy, in the things that we desire. It's human nature to always want more, so we need to have the capability and the characteristics to be able to control ourselves, having a healthy attachment with, you know, the things that we enjoy and the things that we don't like so much, you know.
Well, the way in which I would control my inner nafs, so what I'm thinking of is coping mechanisms. When that's what came to my mind when you said that. And this may sound cliche, but it is quite true, at least in my regard. I would argue that the way in which I help to cope myself down from any type of inner nafs that's not to my benefit is fear. I think of fear, and I think of hell, and I think of like nightmares. Sometimes I'll have a nightmare and I realize I cannot even escape my own dreams. If these nightmares are unbearable, hell's going to be even worse. So I'm going to resist, even though something can be so tempting. And I think about how I can suffer now and embrace suffering and then get the reward later. Do you see what I'm trying to say? The reward for good is only good. So it may be temporarily inconvenient and I have to manage my mind or that desire, but it'll go away eventually. And so I'll be rewarded for resisting, and thinking about fearing Allah helps me to resist that activity.
Definitely, you need to have a healthy dose of fear of Allah. We're humans. We're very complicated. Sometimes we need the reassurance, and we get that in the Quran. Allah constantly talks about His mercy and His forgiveness. So that reassures us. And then again, Allah reminds us that we have to fear Him, you know, because sometimes we need to be put in check. Sometimes we need to hear that we hold ourselves accountable. Make sure the content you're taking in is worthy, or at the very least, balanced. There's too many people that are fixated on TV shows and all the rest of it, but won't listen to a half-an-hour lecture or khutbah. You know, it's such a shame. Work on ridding yourself from content that is beneath you, that is not worthy, that distracts you from better things that you could be doing, like reading the Quran. Work on remembrance. Remembrance will help keep you in that healthy dose of fear. It will help keep you reassured when you're going through difficult times, and branch out, Inshā'Allāh.
Definitely, yes, excellent. I hope this episode helped everyone think about their inner nafs and about just different agendas that are subverting our Islamic consciousness, or got some of the doubts that you had fixed. Struggling against your inner nafs is not easy. So be steadfast, have patience, and we'll see you next episode.
Inshallah. Inshallah. You got cut out there, but I think you said everything you needed to say.
Take care. See you later.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Inshallah, you benefited, and we'd like to hear some comments, of like what you found useful, inshallah, in the comment section below. That would be nice, so that we can get some feedback, inshallah, and any areas that we could improve on as well, or any suggestions of, how you control your inner nafs as well, inshallah, what you thought about the whole issue of the things that influence us as Muslims, from other cultures that kind of, go against our fitrah.
Yeah. No, sounds good. And I would just like to say, as always, any mistakes that we've made in this conversation is from us, our limitations and need for knowledge, and any good is from Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.